On the eve of his 49th birthday, Walter meticulously adjusted the collar of his shirt in front of the mirror, his movements reflecting the caution of a life marked more by accumulated wisdom than material wealth. His face, sculpted by nearly half a century of experiences, bore a serene expression of someone well acquainted with the paths he had walked. The evening ahead was of particular importance. It was not just any dinner, but a formal introduction to the family of Alice, the young woman who had captured the heart of his son, Paul. Walter's modest room was lit only by a lamp with a faded shade, casting soft shadows on the walls covered with wallpaper already worn by time. In the background, a small wooden wardrobe held his clothes neatly organized, from which he chose the best. He settled on a pale blue button-up shirt, which he knew complemented the color of his eyes, and a pair of dark trousers that, though simple, possessed a discreet elegance. Each piece of clothing was chosen not just for its appearance, but for what it represented: respect, seriousness, and a dignity that did not need ostentation to be perceived. When selecting a belt, Walter opted for a leather one, slightly worn around the edges but still functional, a symbol of his practical, unpretentious life. As he dressed, his thoughts wandered over the significance of the meeting. He knew that Robert and Marianne, who came from a social stratum where status and appearance often outweighed substance, might initially judge him by superficial standards. But Walter, armed with his integrity and the values he had instilled in Paul, was prepared to show that the true worth of a man is measured by his conduct and character. Finishing his look with a pair of polished shoes that reflected the lamp's faint glow, Walter took one last look in the mirror. His reflection showed more than a man about to face a challenge. It showed a father who, above all, wanted to pave the way for his son in a relationship he hoped would be long and happy. With a sigh of determination and a slight nod to his own image, he turned to leave the room, ready to accompany Paul to a house that could very well become an extension of his own family. And so, with the last rays of the sun setting and the night drawing near, Walter closed his door while opening a new chapter in his journey, one that might transform not only his life, but also his son's. Walter and Paul crossed the threshold of Robert and Marianne's grand house under the soft light of lanterns flanking the entrance, subtly illuminating a stone pathway leading to the front door. The residence, an imposing Victorian-style structure, boasted large windows and a facade adorned with intricate details that reflected the status and prosperity of its residents. As they entered the foyer, they were greeted with polite smiles and firm handshakes that masked a hint of curious appraisal. The dining room where they were led was a spectacle in itself. Grand, with a crystal chandelier hanging majestically from the high ceiling, it cast a glow that reflected off the silverware and the finely decorated porcelain that adorned the table. Velvet upholstered chairs and walls covered with artistic tapestries completed the scene of opulence. In contrast, Walter, dressed in his most decent but simple attire, felt the weight of the disparity between his reality and the environment around him. He walked with his head held high, despite the sense of displacement he felt, driven by a firm purpose to honor himself and his son. As they sat down, the conversation flowed with the lightness expected of a formal dinner. Comments about the weather and questions about the journey served as a prelude to more substantial topics. However, as the courses were served, each more elaborate than the last, the discussion inadvertently drifted into professional territory. When Walter's occupation was mentioned, a brief yet charged silence filled the room. The air thickened with an uncomfortable subtlety, perceptible only through the glances exchanged between Robert and Marianne, who displayed a mix of surprise and recalibration of expectations. Paul, sensing the subtle shift in the atmosphere, felt a pang of discomfort. His face, usually calm and composed, showed signs of tension as he watched his father handle the situation with unwavering dignity. Walter, for his part, maintained his composure, responding to any inquiries about his life with a quiet pride that left no room for shame over his honest choices and hard work. As the meal progressed, the evaluating looks and pauses in the conversation revealed a silent judgment that hung in the air, dense like the aroma of the richly prepared dishes. Yet Walter, maintaining the same serenity he had brought with him, prepared to change the course of the evening, determined to soften perceptions and show that a man's worth should never be measured by his occupation or the cut of his clothes. He discreetly touched the package he had brought with him, ready to reveal a legacy far greater than the sum of all the wealth in that room. As the tension in the dining room became more palpable, Walter, with the keen perception of someone who had faced many adversities, sensed every glance and every prolonged pause in the conversation. He knew it was time to steer the evening's flow toward calmer waters. With a serene gesture and meticulously maintained composure, Walter reached for his worn leather bag, which rested discreetly beside his chair. Inside, there was a small package wrapped in red velvet fabric, tied with a golden ribbon. The package was modest, but the careful way it had been prepared indicated a special significance. With smooth and deliberate movements, Walter placed the package on the table, drawing the curious eyes of everyone, including Paul, who watched his father with a mix of anxiety and admiration. As he untied the ribbon and revealed the contents, an antique pocket watch was carefully removed from its wrapping. The object, though clearly worn by time, retained a timeless elegance. Its silver surface was engraved with subtle ornaments, indicative of an era when such pieces were not merely instruments for measuring time, but true works of art. When Walter lifted the lid of the watch, the interior revealed something even more extraordinary. Engraved on the inside of the cover was the signature of Austin Fuentes, a name that resonated with significance in the world of Swiss watchmaking. The elegant script glimmered under the soft chandelier light, immediately capturing the attention of Robert, whose eyes lit up with a mixture of surprise and recognition. The revelation of the watch instantly changed the atmosphere of the room. The weight of first impressions and judgments based on status and appearance seemed to dissipate, replaced by a renewed and genuine interest. Walter, observing this subtle transformation, knew he had opened a door previously obscured by a curtain of prejudice. He then began to share the stories associated with the watch, narratives of adventures and challenges faced by his ancestors, whose lives were marked not only by the time measured by the watch, but also by their significant deeds and legacies. With the antique pocket watch now resting like an invaluable artifact on the table, everyone's attention turned to Walter. He began to unravel the thread of memories and stories that accompanied the object, each one intertwined with his family's history. As Walter narrated, the chandelier's dim light seemed to dance more softly, as if wanting to contribute to the atmosphere of enchantment that was forming. He spoke of a great-grandfather who, armed only with his wits and courage, sailed seas never before explored by his people. He described how the watch had been a gift from a grateful monarch whose daughter had been saved from the whims of the sea by this daring ancestor. The stories unfolded like tapestries, each thread revealing challenges and triumphs, from moonlit duels to peaceful negotiations with distant tribes that became unexpected allies. Walter also spoke of a great-great-grandmother, a woman of rare intellect for her time, who used the watch not only to measure time, but as a compass for her revolutionary ideas in a society that placed little value on female voices. She envisioned a fairer world, and the watch was a symbol of her perseverance and hope, passed down from generation to generation as a reminder of both constancy and change. As the stories flowed, the watch's splendor was transcended by the richness of the lives it had witnessed. Robert and Marianne, initially captivated by the mere antiquity and material value of the object, now found themselves absorbed in the narratives that painted Walter in a completely different light. No longer seen merely as a simple stock clerk, but as the guardian of a legacy of courage and integrity. Each tale seemed to soften the lines of judgment and prejudice that had marked the beginning of the dinner. The initial curiosity about the provenance and material worth of the watch gave way to a growing respect for the man who shared not just an object, but an intangible heritage of values and stories. This change in the atmosphere laid the groundwork for a new perception and, perhaps, a new beginning in the relations between the two families. In the days that followed the memorable dinner at Robert and Marianne's house, Walter began to notice a palpable transformation in the way he was treated by the couple. Previously judged by his profession and the simplicity of his appearance, he now received warm greetings and genuine smiles whenever their paths crossed in the small community where they both lived. Robert and Marianne's interest was no longer limited to mere formalities. They asked detailed questions about his life, wanting to know more about the stories Walter had only briefly mentioned during the dinner. This change also extended to Paul, who noticed a new cordiality in his interactions with Alice's parents. Where there had once been a certain reserve, perhaps even a courteous distance, there were now invitations to events and discussions about future plans together. It was as if the stories Walter had shared had opened a door that had previously been closed, allowing a light of appreciation and respect to illuminate the relationship between the families. However, despite the apparent shift in attitude, Paul harbored his own doubts. He watched with a hint of skepticism this newfound deference from Alice's parents. He feared that Robert and Marianne's renewed interest might be superficial, anchored more in the material value of the old pocket watch and the fascinating lineage of Walter than in genuine respect for his father's true essence. Paul's concern was that this admiration might be fleeting, disappearing as soon as the shine of novelty wore off. These thoughts weighed on Paul's mind as he observed his father interacting with the naturalness and dignity that were characteristic of him. Walter, on his part, seemed either unaware of his son's doubts or chose to ignore them, opting to focus on the positive aspects of this new dynamic. However, deep down, Walter shared Paul's concerns, pondering the sincerity of Robert and Marianne's newfound interest. He knew that the true test of a person's character was not in the words exchanged in moments of convenience, but in consistent actions over time. Determined to clarify these doubts and to test the integrity of Robert and Marianne's intentions, Walter began to plan a gesture that would once and for all define the true nature of his newfound acceptance. He knew that actions speak louder than words, and was ready to find out if the respect he now received was rooted in true values or merely a passing admiration for the watch and the stories it symbolized. In the days following the change in attitude from Robert and Marianne, Walter, armed with a firm resolve, decided it was time to truly assess the sincerity of these changes. The pocket watch, which had been the key to a new perception of his value in Alice's parents' eyes, would now become the instrument of his most important test. With a calmness that masked his inner anxiety, Walter carefully planned how he would announce his decision. He chose an appropriate moment during a casual gathering under the pretense of a cordial visit to Robert and Marianne's home. With the atmosphere already mild and small gestures of courtesy established, Walter brought up the topic of the watch, an object that, since the dinner, had gained an almost mythical status among them. Speaking in a calm and measured voice, Walter revealed his plan to donate the pocket watch to a local museum, emphasizing that his decision was a way to preserve and share the rich history and values represented by the piece. He clearly articulated that while the watch had considerable material value, the true treasure lay in the stories of courage, resilience, and integrity it symbolized, legacies far more precious than any amount of money could quantify. Walter closely observed Robert and Marianne's reactions as he unfolded his reasoning. He wanted to see beyond words of support and nods of agreement. He sought genuine signs that the respect they had begun to show was not rooted merely in the material value of the watch, but in a real appreciation for the qualities and stories Walter represented. Their response, their expressions, and gestures in the following moments would be crucial in determining whether the newfound cordiality was indeed sincere or merely a fleeting fascination with the exotic and the valuable. As he shared his plans, Walter felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. He knew he was risking the newly acquired esteem in the eyes of Robert and Marianne, but for him, it was essential to confirm that the respect he sought for himself and his son was grounded in solid, genuine foundations, not in superficial impressions or material interest. This decision, though risky, was his way of preserving the integrity of his legacy while testing the ground on which the future relationship between the two families would be built. On the night Walter revealed his plans to donate the pocket watch, the atmosphere was charged with expectation. As he laid out his intentions, All eyes in the room were fixed on him, captivated by the gravity of the moment. Robert and Marianne, in particular, listened intently, processing the news with expressions that initially masked their true internal reactions. As Walter elaborated on his motivation to pass on the watch's legacy, emphasizing his desire for its stories and values to inspire others beyond his family, something remarkable occurred. Robert and Marianne's expressions began to change, softening as the full significance of Walter's decision unfolded before them. When he finished, the couple exchanged a look that conveyed not only surprise but genuine respect. Robert and Marianne's response was notably positive. They expressed their support for Walter's decision in a manner overflowing with sincerity, highlighting a profound admiration for his integrity and respect for his family history. This reaction not only confirmed the authenticity of their changed attitudes, but also dispelled the doubts Paul had about the genuineness of Alice's parents' feelings. Seeing his future in-laws endorse a decision that placed values and legacy above materialism was truly a revelation. Paul and Alice, observing this interaction, felt a profound sense of relief. Alice's parents' sincere approval of Walter's decision erased any lingering reservations Paul might have had about their support for his relationship with Alice. For the young couple, this moment not only reinforced the bond between their families, but also cast new light on the possibilities of their future together. The evening ended with a shared sense of a new beginning, where mutual respect and acceptance were established as solid foundations for the continuation of their journeys together. As night fell and the gathering drew to a close, Walter felt a quiet satisfaction. The approval of Robert and Marianne not only validated his choice, but reaffirmed the importance of the values he held so dear. With this certainty, he knew he was paving the way for future generations to recognize and appreciate the true meaning of heritage and legacy. In the days following the decisive night, when Walter announced the donation of the pocket watch, he often found himself lost in deep reflection. Walking through the quiet streets of his town, observing the daily life unfolding with its usual simplicity, Walter pondered the ripples his actions had caused in the previously stagnant waters of family and social relations. The fresh morning air, as he walked to the supermarket where he worked, seemed to carry new promises with it. Walter realized that while society often judged individuals by superficial criteria such as profession or socioeconomic status, his recent experiences had proven that it was possible to break these prejudices through sincere demonstrations of character and ethics. He reflected on how the true nature of people could be revealed, not when they followed the expected course, but when confronted with situations that challenged their preconceptions and values. Walter thought about the expressions on Robert and Marianne's faces when they understood the depth of his decision to donate the watch. The change in how they now saw him, not as a mere stock clerk, but as a man of substance and dignity, was a testament to the power of actions over words. He knew his choices had not only shaped others' perceptions of him, but had also left an indelible mark on how his family would be seen and treated going forward. These reflections were accompanied by a sense of renewed responsibility. Walter understood that his actions had set a precedent within his community. He had opened a path that others might choose to follow, a path that valued integrity and morality above appearances and materialism. The acceptance of his decision by influential figures like Robert and Marianne not only reinforced his status as a man of honor, but also served as a powerful reminder that positive changes are possible, even on a small scale. With this new understanding, Walter felt energized to continue living according to his principles, knowing that every moral choice he made was not only a reflection of his character, but also a cornerstone in building a legacy of respect and integrity. It was a new dawn, not just for him, but for his son Paul and Alice, who were beginning to walk a path illuminated by mutual understanding and respect, grounded not in material wealth, but in the rich fabric of authentic human relationships. As the days passed after Walter's decision was revealed, Paul found himself in a constant state of reflection and self-evaluation. Observing the positive impact his father's integrity had generated, he began to question and reassess his own priorities and how he viewed prevailing social values. Paul, who had until then navigated society's expectations with a certain critical detachment, now felt compelled to adopt a more active and conscious stance regarding his principles. Inspired by Walter's courage and selflessness, he began to realize that the true measures of a man were not found in the fleeting shine of material possessions or the mere projection of a successful image, but in the strength of his character and the quality of his actions. With this new perspective, Paul started making significant changes in his life. He sought opportunities to demonstrate compassion and justice, even in everyday situations that might have previously gone unnoticed. His relationship with Alice also deepened, as there was now an added layer of mutual respect and admiration, based on recognizing the values they both chose to prioritize. This personal transformation not only enriched his character, but also began to influence those around him. Paul became more vocal about his convictions, challenging, when necessary, norms that valued the superficial over substance. He took a more active role in community discussions and youth groups, sharing the lessons he had learned from his father and encouraging his peers to rethink their own priorities and actions. As Paul embraced this new philosophy of life, he noticed a palpable change in his own inner peace and personal satisfaction. The pride he felt in his father's legacy and the desire to perpetuate those values through his own actions provided a sense of purpose and clarity he had never experienced before. This was a path that, while filled with challenges, promised a wealth of incomparable spiritual and emotional rewards. Empowered by this new direction, Paul looked to the future with renewed hope and strengthened determination. He was ready to face the challenges ahead, knowing that every conscious choice he made not only shaped his destiny, but also helped build a world where character and integrity were the true currencies of value. As Paul embraced his father's lessons and redefined his values, Alice watched with growing admiration the evolution of the man she had chosen to share her life with. The transformation not only strengthened the foundation of their relationship, but also nurtured a deeper connection between them, anchored in mutual respect and a shared understanding that a person's true worth transcends their material possessions and social status. The acceptance and support they received from their parents after Walter's revelations and decisions helped solidify this new foundation. Robert and Marianne, having overcome their initial reservations and shown a profound change in their perception of Walter, extended this new outlook to Paul and Alice. Their support was no longer conditional on conforming to superficial expectations, but was based on a genuine appreciation of their qualities and aspirations. This evolution in family dynamics provided Paul and Alice with the freedom and security to explore the depth of their relationship even further. They began to discuss future plans with a frankness and openness that might previously have been constrained by concerns about judgments or family expectations. The topics of their conversations expanded to include not only the practical aspects of a shared life, but also the values and dreams they hoped to cultivate together, both individually and as a couple. This newfound mutual understanding and parental support also encouraged Alice to bring forth her own reflections and convictions, which she had hesitated to fully share before, fearing they might not align with Paul's expectations or those of their families. In light of unconditional acceptance, she felt empowered to express herself more fully, further strengthening the bond between them. As Paul and Alice's relationship grew in depth and maturity, they became an example within their respective families and social circles, demonstrating how mutual respect and shared values can build a resilient and enriching relationship. They were now living proof that love, when rooted in genuine respect and solid values, can effectively transcend the barriers that materialism and social status often impose. With this new foundation established, Paul and Alice looked to the future with renewed clarity, ready to face together whatever challenges life might present, knowing that their commitment to each other was sustained by far more than external circumstances could offer. As the days passed and the effects of his decisions continued to reverberate positively, Walter experienced a sense of contentment and tranquility that he had not felt in a long time. Walking through the parks and streets of his town, he observed people's daily interactions reflecting on the invisible web of values and principles that weave the fabric of a community. Walter now understood, with a clarity that only maturity and experience can provide, that the true wealth he could leave for his son was not found in objects of material value, but in the examples of integrity, resilience, and compassion he had demonstrated throughout his life. The decision to donate the watch and the subsequent changes in Robert and Marianne's attitudes were testaments to the power of a legacy based on authentic values. He saw in Paul a reflection of his own youth, but with the added advantage of a path already paved by solid principles and lived virtues. Walter felt a serene confidence that the lessons he had imparted, those discussions about the importance of being true to oneself and others, of acting justly, and of honoring the history and teachings of one's ancestors, were now integral parts of Paul's character. This transmission of values was not limited to his immediate family. Walter noticed that his influence also extended to Alice's family, where new conversations about what truly matters in life had been sparked. Robert and Marianne, who initially might have seen Walter through a lens of prejudice and assumptions, now respected him as an equal, a true bearer of wisdom and dignity. The impact of these changes was also felt in the broader community. Co-workers and acquaintances expressed a newfound respect, and in some cases, a curiosity about how they too could live in a more authentic and meaningful way. Walter often found himself sharing his reflections and experiences, always emphasizing that the true measures of success are found in the qualities of the heart and spirit, not in material possessions. This sense of peace and purpose reaffirmed for Walter that the values he cherished would indeed be his greatest legacy, a non-material legacy with the power to endure far beyond his own life, influencing future generations. With this conviction, he continued to live each day with the certainty that the example of a life well lived is the most powerful instrument of education and change a man can offer. As the season changed, bringing with it the crispness of autumn that painted the town in shades of gold and red, the local community began to witness and reflect on the transformations within Robert and Marianne's family. The changes that were unfolding not only redefined relationships between individual family members, but also began to resonate more widely, influencing the community as a whole. Walter, whose life had been marked by dignified simplicity and quiet wisdom, was now emerging as a central figure in this web of influence. Stories of his decision to donate the watch, an object of great material and historical value, and the principles guiding this and other decisions spread like seeds on the wind. People talked about how he had chosen to preserve and share his family's historical legacy, placing the common good and cultural preservation above personal gain. As these stories circulated, Walter began to be seen not only as a man of great character, but also as a catalyst for deeper reflection on what truly constitutes wealth and success in life. At community events, in conversations at local coffee shops, and even at school meetings, people began to cite Walter's example as a model of integrity and authenticity. Admiration for his stance inspired many in the community to reassess their own priorities. Discussion groups were formed to explore themes of ethics, family values, and community responsibility. Teachers began incorporating lessons on character and morality in their classrooms, using Walter's story as a practical case study to inspire young people to think more critically about society and their role within it. At city council meetings, local leaders discussed ways to foster a stronger sense of community and mutual support, influenced by Walter's example. Community projects emphasizing sustainability and cultural legacy gained new momentum, with more volunteers and ideas being proposed. This wave of positive change, triggered by the example of a man who valued principles over possessions, reflected a palpable shift in the town's atmosphere. Walter, observing all of this, felt deep gratification in seeing that his choices had not only impacted his family, but also encouraged his community to pursue a path of greater cohesion and meaning. With the community now on a path of reflection and growth, Walter pondered how one person's legacy could extend far beyond their immediate actions, inspiring a chain of changes that could eventually transform an entire society. As the sun set, painting the sky in a deep, reflective orange, Walter sat in his garden, enveloped by the cool twilight air whispering through the leaves of the trees. There, in the midst of the quiet, he contemplated the path he had traveled, a journey marked by challenges overcome and personal and communal victories intertwined like the branches of the trees above him. Surrounded by the love of his family, which found new strength and unity with each passing day, and embraced by the genuine respect of a community that saw him as a beacon of principles and humanity, Walter reflected on the legacy he was building. The love and respect emanating from his very being had become his greatest achievements, far surpassing any material wealth he could have accumulated. As night fell and the stars began to dot the vast celestial canvas, Walter pondered the vastness of life and the smallness of the worldly concerns that so often occupy our thoughts and energies. He realized with increasing clarity that the true challenges of life offer opportunities to affirm character, to choose love over conflict and integrity over convenience. The impact of his choices resonated not only within the confines of his home or the streets of his town, but in the continuity of the generations to come. Walter knew that the life lessons he embodied would be his most enduring legacy, treasures of wisdom and courage that he passed on to his son and that Paul in turn would pass on to others. Reflecting on the journey of his life, Walter understood that every moment of difficulty faced with courage, every decision made with integrity, and every act of compassion left an indelible mark on the fabric of the universe. His life story, a narrative of love, loss, redemption, and wisdom, was a testament to the transformative power of universal human values. As the night deepened and the silence of the garden enveloped him, Walter felt at peace, knowing he had lived a full life, not by the accumulation of possessions, but by the enrichment of the souls around him. He gazed at the starry sky, each star a twinkling reminder that in the grand scheme of existence, what truly matters is who we are and what we share. Walter's story concluded, but its echo would reverberate, a persistent whisper of wisdom passed from heart to heart, from generation to generation.
So, if you're not subscribed yet, click on the subscribe button below and join our community. Thank you for your support and see you in the next videos.